Hello everyone, I'm Papa Ken, and welcome to episode 53 of Discovering Doctor Who. You might notice that, first of all, there wasn't an intro to this video, and also you might notice a slight difference in the production value. I actually won't know until this video is done, but the reason is because I'm actually going to be editing this on a computer that is not my primary computer, and therefore I'm going to be using Windows Movie Maker. God help me. So hopefully this doesn't look like complete crap, but I'm going to do my best to do the best I can, basically. Well, let's get right into things. Today's episode that I'm going to be covering is Amy's Choice, and this was quite an episode, I have to say. And let's get right into my favorite parts of this episode, starting with number one, the trippy beginning. Now, I honestly, when this episode started, I thought that we had actually shot forward in time, that it was, what they say, like 5 years later, Amy was actually pregnant, and that, you know, that everything had got off with a hitch. And I was actually kind of annoyed at first because I was thinking, okay, was there some sort of mini-sode that I didn't know about that fills in the gaps where they got married? And then it transitions over to the second reality where they're on the TARDIS, and just the way all that began was just absolutely phenomenal. I thought it was one of the best introductions so far this season, by far, but it was stronger than a lot of earlier seasons' intros as well. Again, just in my opinion, but it was really good. Now, moving on to my second favorite part of this episode, the Dream Lord, played by Toby Jones. Yes, Toby Jones. I actually wrote down the person's name this time, but he just did an excellent job of playing this creepy little, well, you know, the vision of a man, but just this creepy little entity. And just the way he spoke about things, the way he spoke about the Doctor's past, or just events that have occurred in the past, and I'm sure even ones that occurred in the classic era that I don't know about. The way he spoke to Amy and Rory, the way he belittled all of them, it was just so well done. Even though he's not, well, he was actually a pretty huge threat, but even though he's not like one of the most dangerous appearing enemies in this show, I would say he has the potential to be one of the most terrifying if he makes any future appearances, because I mean, you basically have a character that can split into two realities, even though he's part of a dream. But yeah, I just there's just so much about the character that I really liked. But moving on, my third favorite part about this episode was the mystery around the two realities, the way that the characters couldn't decide what was real and what wasn't. I, as the viewer, couldn't figure out what was real and what wasn't. I took a guess near the beginning and I ended up being right, but it was, I mean, it had a 50-50 chance in that, essentially. But just the whole mystery surrounding that, the things that they learn as they go along, and then the birds come and they pass out and they wake up in the alternate reality, and the way things keep getting more dire in each reality, or each dream, I guess you would say. And yeah, it was, I don't know how else to describe it. It's just the way that both of those mysteries were, or the mystery of the two realities was presented, and the choice that had to be made was just really good writing, I have to say. Now, my fourth favorite part of this episode was Amy's choice, when it came right down to it. And it was a choice that, I don't know, in my mind, I can very much relate to, because Rory just, he gets disintegrated. He's dead. And if I was in Amy's shoes, I would have been in the same state. It's basically, okay, I have two choices. Either I have to choose between this universe where the person I love is dead, or take a risk and the other world, or the other reality, might be real. And I don't care what happens, because either way, I don't have that person I love anymore. And then she even points out that she never told him that she loved him, which I actually didn't notice. I thought she had in the previous episode, but apparently I was wrong with that. So yeah, just the choice that Amy made when it all came right down to it, and it made it a very fitting name for this episode. It was just, I really like the way they did it. Yeah. But anyway, the fifth and final favorite part of this episode was the space pollen. Now, given it's kind of a silly plot device, I guess you could say, but as someone that personally suffers from allergies, I'm sure that you all have noticed that I will sniffle quite a bit in some of my previous videos, hopefully not in this one, but as someone that suffers from allergies, I found that to be hilarious and just a really good plot device for them to use, essentially. Now, moving on, my annoyances with this episode, there aren't as many as before, I will say that, but there are a few, and they all kind of focus around the same thing. Starting with my first annoyance, the old people just weren't scary. Even though, you know, they had the aliens inside of them, and that was kind of weird. And yes, they could spit the acid or whatever it was that could disintegrate people. But when all we really see are these old people going after the Doctor and Amy and Rory, and even when they're holding weapons and gardening tools and they're supposed to be this really fearsome thing that's coming after them, it at no point, it just seemed silly. It didn't seem scary in the least to me. Even when they disintegrated a person, it just, the first time it happened I was kind of like, oh, so that's what the spit does. Yeah, I don't know, it's just the old people and really the creatures that were inside them, just, I didn't find them scary, and I think that's the impression that they were supposed to be giving, that they were these fearsome, horrifying monsters, but I just didn't get that at all. But moving on, my second annoyance with this episode was actually, and the aliens were called the Ecnodine, but basically the spray that they shoot out. And it's mostly because of the incredible inconsistency of how it worked. Now, the first time that we actually see it hit a person, the guy just disintegrates completely immediately. And then after that, they spit at the Doctor and Rory and them, and they seem to dodge. But the way the graphics are presented, it seems like it's in a pretty big cloud. So in my mind, some of that had to have hit them. But even then, if getting shot at, or if getting hit with this stuff can make a person completely disintegrate in seconds, surely if it hit solid objects, it would have some sort of effect on that as well. Or maybe it's just specifically organic matter, and I'll forgive it in that way. But then when Rory gets hit with it and he actually dies, at first I was like, really? He got hit with this stuff and nothing's wrong? He's like limping a little bit. It completely disintegrated someone else, but he's just limping. And then of course he does end up slowly disintegrating. But just like that other guy, he got hit with a direct hit of this stuff. So why did it not just wipe him away immediately? For plot, obviously. But yeah, that really bothered me. As my annoyances obviously do. But moving on, my third and final annoyance with this episode was the whole segment where the Doctor was saving the people of the town. And it's because of two reasons. One, because all of these people are pretty well surrounded by the old people that have these aliens inside of them, easily within the spray distance. And then, most of all, because it was just filler. Like that was literally, in my mind, that was the only reason any of that was there, was just for there to be filler in the episode and make it more than, you know, just a half an hour episode. I don't know, I feel like they could have filled it up with something better, or maybe just focused on the story around what's going on with Rory and Amy. Maybe focus a little bit more on the Dream Lord, something like that. But that entire sequence where the Doctor is saving those people just seemed completely unnecessary and entirely filler in what is admittedly a filler episode, but a good one. But before I get to my final thoughts, which I guess I kind of gave a teaser for that just now, let's talk about my song of the episode. And this one actually, for once, is not the same name as the episode itself. The song of the episode is called This Is the Dream, obviously by Murray Gold. And when I was listening to this song, it really just, it spelled out the entire episode. It had this dark, foreboding, often very sad intonation that just goes back and forth from like an intense darkness to the lonely, sad darkness. Yeah. But yeah, it was just a really good song, and I'm going to go back and do this for the other songs of the episodes as well, but I'm going to include an intonation over the name and a link down in the bottom to where you all can go and listen to the song if you haven't already. Now moving on, it's time for the quote of the episode, and this is one that, this one hit me hard when I was watching this episode. It was just a real big jab, because it was such a good quote. And it's a short little back and forth between Amy and the Doctor right after Rory has died. And it starts with Amy and goes to the Doctor. Save him. You save everyone. You always do. That's what you do. Not always. I'm sorry. Then what is the point of you? That last line right there. Now, some of the commenters have mentioned how this season is kind of a fairy tale of sorts, or it has that feeling of being a fairy tale. With that line right there, then what is the point of you? That is the moment where, at least for me, it feels like Amy just got ripped out of this fairy tale, even though it's in a dream, obviously. But she sees some of the reality. She grew up in that instance a little bit, in that she realizes that the Doctor isn't just this amazing fairy tale perfect being. He can't save everyone, and that decisions that are made have consequences. Again, that's just the way I interpreted it. But that moment right there was just so powerful. And probably the most powerful moment of this entire season so far. And that made me really, really happy. And if it isn't obvious at this point, as for my overall thoughts of this episode, I really liked it. Now, the negatives were really, really annoying, I will say. Just the monsters, quote-unquote, not being scary, inconsistency with what those monsters could do, and then the fairly sized filler segment. But overall, with this being, in my mind, what is a filler episode, because it wasn't really related to any of the other storylines beyond Rory and Amy's love, it was a really good filler episode. Unless I missed some of the cracks. If there was a crack in there somewhere, let me know, but I missed it entirely if it did appear. But yeah, it was just, despite its faults, this was a really good episode in my opinion. I would say it's probably in the top 2 for me so far. And everyone, with that, I'm going to end this episode right there. Thank you so very much for joining along and watching this episode. Please let me know all of your thoughts about Amy's choice. I forgot the name of the episode for a second there. But yeah, I just don't want to keep it too long because editing this thing could be a monster on Windows Movie Maker. But until next time, everyone, again, thank you so much, and I will see you for the Hungry Earth. Until then, Alonzi!